Good morning, everyone. It is Monday, June 22nd, and morning has broken. I am your consecrated host. It's Father Jeff's day off because apparently after doing some masses and other things all weekend, he needs a day off. I don't know what that's about, but you get me. It was a lovely Father's Day weekend, and so I'm actually have a special guest today. We talked about it a little bit last week of the potential, but he is a father, but not a father like Father Jeff. It's actually a deacon. And so our newest deacon to the parish, it's Deacon Steve Hill. And so he is joining us now.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm good. And so you are our newest deacon. I don't know if of the deacons you are the most newly... Is it ordination?
We are ordained.
So it's an
I believe Dan is the most recently ordained of the three of us. Deacon Dave was ordained a while ago. I don't know exactly when, but I was ordained in 2016 in the Diocese of Joliet, Illinois, and moved out here in 2018 to be closer to grandkids.
And so that's all you had to do was just say, hey, I'd like to be closer to grandkids?
As far as me personally, my wife and I, Linda and I, it was a big move. All of our family is still in the Chicagoland area, except for our two daughters. We have two daughters. One who lives in Papillion here in Nebraska, the other one who lives in Seattle. The rest of our family is still in the Chicagoland area. So moving away from that area was difficult. It was a difficult decision to make, but we were at the point in time in our life where we decided if we were going to move, we were going to move where the grandkids were. Because the two little ones, we've got two granddaughters. They're growing up here not knowing any family because my son-in-law was in the military and he was in the Navy, which being in Nebraska in the Navy doesn't make a lot of sense, but
yeah.
Apparently the way they work it, they have a tour on the boat and then a tour on land. His tour on land was at Offutt. So he was stationed here for a number of years and then decided that if he stayed in the Navy, he would need to go back on the boat and didn't want to do the kind of that traveling with the two young ones. So they hired him as a civilian contractor. So they love being in Nebraska. He was able to continue to do the job that he loved. My daughter's a school teacher. She was able to work at a school district and just loved it. So so they were here. We decided to come out with them. My son-in-law's family's in mainly the Southwest, but also in Tennessee. So they didn't have any family. So we decided to kind of fix that. But as far as the process, it was sitting down with my pastor in Illinois and kind of letting him know for personal reasons that my wife and I were looking to move. Once we did that, sitting down with the bishop in the Diocese of Joliet where I was ordained and letting them know what was going on. And then once I got out here, meeting with the Chancery Office of the Archdiocese of Omaha, letting them know that I'm coming in. I had to get some paperwork from Joliet sent here to say that, yes, I am an ordained deacon, and yes, I am kind of a good guy, if you will.
In good standing.
In good standing, etc. And they were able to transfer me in. So it was actually very easy for me to come into the Archdiocese of Omaha. I have some of my classmates who have had similar moves elsewhere in the country, and they've had issues with not being able to serve right away, and that the diocese that they went to kind of put a restriction or limitation on when they could start serving. So they had to be there for a certain number of years before they could actually start
years,
to serve.
so it wasn't months.
Correct.
Wow. That's got to be a little bit tough.
But now I will say the one aspect that really proves it is a small world, my pastor in Illinois, when I sat down and talked to him and let him know that this is what we were doing, at that point in time we had a contract on the house. We hadn't closed yet. And we let him know that we were looking to move. He's like, well, what parish are you going to? Why he would know the parishes out here, I don't really know. But I said, well, there's one or two that are kind of equidistant from our house. We live basically at 192nd and 370, so kind of directly south of the parish. I said, we've got St. Charles Borromeo and then also St. Patrick in Gretna. I said, so we're going to kind of go out and do a little bit of parish shopping, if you will. And my pastor in Illinois said, well, which one are you leaning towards? And we told him we thought it was going to be St. Charles. He said, well, who's the pastor? Like, I don't know. I'm lucky I know the name of the parish at this point. And so he pulls out his phone, he pulls up a picture of Father Jeff. He goes, yeah, this is my best friend in seminary. So my pastor in Illinois and Father Jeff were best friends in seminary.
Wow, that is a small world.
It's a very small world.
Very cool.
So.
And so I want to just go back further, because it's good to let people know, get to know people here. You know, you showed up 2 years ago?
2018.
Do you know what month you came?
My wife came out, Linda came out in June, and I followed in September after I had finished up a commitment at work.
Awesome. And so it's coming. It doesn't seem like it's been 2 years, but time, especially right now, it's just... And
I started serving in October. So that weekend, getting some paperwork through with the Archdiocese, ended up having to have an in-person meeting with the Chancery. That got delayed a little bit for scheduling purposes. So I ended up meeting with them on a Saturday. I want to say it's the second week of October, and forced the issue to meet with them on the Saturday because Father Jeff had me on the schedule for Mass and a baptism on the Sunday. So.
Oh, man. He didn't waste any time getting you right to work.
Right.
And so, did you grow up in the Chicagoland area?
Born and raised in the suburbs of Chicago.
So are you a Cubs fan, White Sox fan?
I'm a little unusual in that I am a White Sox fan, but I don't hate the Cubs. So in Chicago, it's kind of one of those things where if you're a fan of the one team, you have to hate the other team. Which, growing up in the western suburbs, the reason why I'm a White Sox fan is my dad refused to go to Wrigley Field because there was no parking. So driving in from the suburbs, at least at Comiskey Park, the old Comiskey Park, they had a couple of vacant fields behind the stadium that they would turn into parking lots.
Sure.
That you can go in and park. So he refused to go to Wrigley Field, so that's what caused me to be a White Sox fan. But I don't hate the Cubs. So I will root for them unless they're playing the Sox.
And you got a World Series before the Cubs did.
Yes.
At the expense of my Astros. But we won't go into those deep wounds.
We won't dwell on that.
The Astros got theirs.
We won't go into that
either. And so you grew up in the Chicagoland area. Mm-hmm. Did you go to college there?
So yeah, the basically all of it in the western suburbs. So I went to North Central College, which is a small liberal arts school in Naperville, which happens to be the town that Linda and I had lived in before moving out here. So like I said, my universe was fairly small. But yeah, born and raised in that area. Family still lives there, so we do try to get back at least a couple times a year. It's been a while since we've been back, especially because of the virus, but looking forward to getting back there probably in the next month or two.
Very good. And so you went to college. What was your degree in?
So I am an accountant. So the double major between accounting and computer science. And went the path of going to public accounting, worked for Ernst & Young for a number of years, moved from there to the industry, worked in the investment services industry, and ultimately before coming out here I was the chief accounting and financial officer for the Power Shares mutual funds. So it's kind of that investment product type routine.
Very cool. So you're doing accounting, and then you decide to become, because this is pretty recent, you decide to become a deacon.
Decided to become a deacon. So born and raised Catholic, so I've been Catholic my whole life, and a little bit of history on that. So when I was, I believe, 7, my dad passed away, and which helped my family to kind of get a lot closer. So I've got 2 older sisters. I've got a younger half-brother. My mom did remarry. But as part of that, because of my dad passing away, it really caused my mom and my 2 sisters and I to really kind of have a close bond. When my sister ultimately started looking, and she found her husband, found her significant other, I should say, before they were married, they were looking to get married in the Catholic Church. And for whatever reason, I was young at the time, So I didn't fully understand what was going on, but all I knew was that they said that the Catholic Church wouldn't marry them, which did cause a big rift between the family and the church. And with my sister, so that the church wouldn't marry her and her now husband, so they ended up getting married at a non-denominational Christian church. Right around that same time frame, my mom started dating a gentleman, and they decided that they were going to get married. Because of all this stuff going on with my sister, they also decided to get married in that same non-denominational Christian church, which I tend to remember going and attending services there for probably 2 or 3 weekends, and that was about it. In that they were married and kind of building their lives together at that point. I was still young. I want to say I was 13 at the time my folks got
your
married.
sister's decently older.
5 years older.
Okay.
So you got married right out of high school.
Oh, wow.
And they're still married now, but at that point in time, again, the whole family kind of pulled away from the church. Fast forward a couple of years, I started working for my next door neighbor's family business, in that they had a family amusement park business, and the business was run by my next door neighbor, his dad, he's my best friend plus his dad. His brother also had a component of the business, and their dad had a component of the business. So the family business was a dad and 2 sons, and it was an amusement park business. So I started working for them over the summers. Well, my friend's uncle, who owned part of the business, happens to be the dad of my wife.
Oh.
So Linda and I knew each other growing up. She used to live 2 houses down from us when we were very young. They had moved away probably when we were 7, 8, 9-ish. They moved to a different town in the area, but they still had the connection. We still knew one another because, their family connection between, her uncle was my best friend's dad.
Sure.
And they lived next door, so the best friend lived next door. So I started working for my next door neighbor. Linda was working for her dad, and a connection was made. We started dating. So being an amusement park business, you tend to have a lot of hours over the summer when it's sunny out and warm out. And we got into the habit when we were dating. We both worked on Sunday, but we would get together, attend Mass, go to lunch, and then go to work. Now, I will say that in my mind, looking back on it, the reason why I was doing that is, again, I had pulled away from the Catholic Church, hadn't been attending Mass for the longest time. So I was going to Mass because I thought that's what she wanted to do. She also was born and raised Catholic. It wasn't until after we were married that she made the comment to me that the reason why she was going to Mass those mornings and then going to lunch, etc., was because she thought that's what I wanted to do. So it is truly God working in mysterious ways of trying to get the two of us to kind of come back to the church.
Sure, yeah.
And we actually love those times together, being able to go to Mass and spend some time with each other before going on to work. And I won't presume that it was because of us going to church, but the family did ultimately start coming back to where both my sisters and my mom did start attending Mass. They both had their marriages validated by the Catholic Church, and
awesome.
The entire family is continuing to attend Mass on a regular basis. So it does kind of come in those cycles.
Yes.
But so with that, so we came back to the church. Linda and I ultimately got married. We had 2 daughters of our own, and I will say that my faith life was not super strong. So it was attending Mass, but probably kind of going through the motions a bit. And it wasn't until probably the girls were probably, I think her oldest was about 13 or so. She was going through her confirmation preparation program. And for me, at that point in time, I was laid off from the job that I was in, and was struggling. It was right around the year 2000, and the economy wasn't very good. So I was struggling trying to find work, and the catechist that had been teaching my daughter basically sent out a plea to the kids, the parents of the kids that are in her class, saying, "I need help." And I kind of was thinking about it, going, well, I really have nothing going on, so I might as well do this. One, it'll help me spend more time with my daughter. So I went ahead and did that. And despite being Catholic my whole life, going through CCD, and maybe not being that great of a student, but I learned more in those 2 years of confirmation preparation than I learned for all of the years going through religious education as a kid. And that might be, just the fact that I wasn't really paying attention. But that was kind of the start of the flame that was inside me, that flame of faith just kind of starting to burn a little bit more brightly. So that was kind of the start of it. There was a small group of men that was meeting at our parish in Illinois, and they had gone through the Crucio program, which is similar to CEC, Christians Encounter Christ, here in Omaha. And they asked me to kind of meet with them a little bit, so I had been kind of getting together with them on a Saturday, but I hadn't gone through the program yet. And the small group that I met with was comprised of 2 deacons, 2 other lay individuals, and myself. Again, being Catholic my whole life, I had no idea who a deacon was. So other than the fact that they were up on the altar and getting to know these 2 guys on a personal level and realizing they're kind of normal guys, really helped me. And I didn't really know that many people in the parish. It was one of those things, we would go to church on Sunday. Linda would know everybody. I would know nobody. And I'd kind of, who's that? And she would tell me. I'm like, well, who's that over there? And she would tell me. But I didn't really know who anybody was. So the one of the deacons in my small group had asked me to attend a Crucio weekend, which it would start on at least the ones in Illinois, would start on a Thursday night and run through Sunday night. CEC here goes 1 day shorter than that, but and I basically said no. Immediately said no. Kind of going through a retreat weekend, I'm like, nah, it's not for me. And between his persistence, coupled with kind of Linda talking into my ear of, hey, this might be a way for you to get to know guys in the parish, because it was actually going to be run by many of the guys that were in our parish, and that I think the entire kitchen team was made up of guys from our parish plus other people on the team.
Because usually those types of retreats have a bunch of different parishes.
And this one did as well, but over half of the guys, because the leader of the weekend was from our parish, so over half the guys kind of were from our parish. So ultimately I said, okay, fine, I'll go ahead and I'll go on the weekend. And that was the most incredible experience I'd been on ever, to this day. Wow. And that in my brain I kept knowing God loves me, but that was up here. On that weekend, I felt his love for me. And that was something I'd never experienced.
So cool.
Completely changed my life. Now, as far as how I got to the diaconate, so that was kind of the really sparking and throwing all kinds of fuel onto my flame of faith. So it started burning a lot brighter. It's probably about 6 months later, Linda and I were out to dinner, and we were going to a wine pairing dinner at a local restaurant. Because it was just the 2 of us, we ended up getting seated with this couple that we hadn't met before. And I don't know how, but at some point during the dinner, the conversation turned to church, turned to the Eucharist. And it might just been the fact that I had quite a bit of wine, I don't know. But I couldn't help but talk about the Eucharist and what it meant to me. And the woman across the table kind of was looking at me, and she stopped. She's like, "You really should be a deacon." I'm like, no, not me. Being part of that small group with two deacons in the group, they were continually asking, they were asking all of us in the group if we would want to become a deacon. And anytime basically it was every other year, they would open it up for a new diaconate class and you would be able to submit an application. So anytime that was coming up, they would both kind of increase, not the pressure, but the request to have us consider it. And every time it came up was, no, it's not for me. I can't be a deacon. There's way too many people that are, stronger in their faith, that know more about the Bible, that, the diaconate is meant for service to the community, that are better at serving others. So no, it's not for me. But at one point in time, I started feeling kind of a nudge on my heart. Kind of like heartburn, if you will.
Oh, man. An uncomfortable nudge, huh?
And it was one of those things where I just kept hearing God say, I want more from you. And no matter what I did, I'm like, all right. So I joined the church choir. I became a lector. I became a Eucharistic minister. What else did I get involved in? Eucharistic adoration. Was helping out at the local food pantry. Just whatever I could do to say, okay, fine, you want more from me, I will try to do more.
So you did everything but...
And everything I did, that just pressing on my heart of, I want more from you, just, it wouldn't stop. So I kept thinking, and finally I'm like, you know what, maybe I should think about the diaconate. Think about it. So I sat down with Linda, and we had a conversation. And I really wanted her input because what I was challenged by, the two individuals at my small group, the two deacons as part of the small group, they made sure to let me know that if this decision is one that you made, you want to become a deacon, it does affect your whole family. So it affects both you and your spouse. Even though your wife isn't being ordained, it is going to impact her. So I wanted her input. Our kids were older, so it was kind of less of an impact with them. But I wanted to at least have the conversation with them because it would impact them. And the funniest part was, so I told Linda that I'm thinking about it. And from my perspective, thinking means, okay, we're having a conversation. There's no pen to paper. There's nothing else going on. Linda heard that, and she immediately was like down the street, around the corner, and off she went going, okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm thinking about it. But I kept praying, saying, if this is what you want from me, fine, I will do it. But if not, please let me know. Because I kept thinking I didn't want to be a deacon. But I would bow to the will of God. If that's what he wanted for me, and that's what he wanted for my life, fine. So I kept praying from that perspective, give me a sign that you don't want me to do this. And didn't get that sign. So ultimately I did submit the application, filled it out, submitted it. And I will say, the minute I submitted the application, the feeling on my heart went away. So the uncomfortable feeling that I want more from you went away. So it was kind of that affirmation from God that, yeah, okay, it took you long enough, but you finally got to where I wanted you to be. So submitted the application. Our diaconate training in Illinois, in the Diocese of Joliet, was about a 4.5-year program. The first half year was kind of reminding you what it was like going to class, but then 4 years of real training.
Wow.
And it was 2 nights a week, a couple weekends a month, a couple Saturdays a month, and it was a good program. And I've been thrilled about being a deacon since. Still trying to, as far as the ministries that I'm involved in, out here, still trying to get find my place, sure, if you will. But
and so in those 4 years, is it mostly theology and philosophy classes?
It runs a spectrum between social justice, theology, kind of Bible study, if you will, faith life, liturgical rites, kind of going through the canon, which was a bit of a challenge. So a little bit of everything, but in a condensed form. And like even the Bible study, for instance, we went through both the Old Testament and the New Testament in one semester, which there's no way you can go through everything.
So one
it's
semester
kind of
for each, or one semester for the whole Bible?
Total.
Wow.
So it's kind of scraping the top, and I think they're assuming that there's either you've gone through enough Bible studies to kind of go through the detail, but it was at least a good base.
Sure. And then do they do any kind of preaching classes or anything like that?
We did a homiletics class, so and basically through ordination, you're given your faculties. So knowing that you can, actually assist at Mass, and you can preside at certain of the liturgies, such as baptisms, wake services, the vigil service, those types of things. So they'll give you faculties, including preaching is one of the faculties that they can give you. Not everybody would get it. It all depends on kind of that individual.
Sure.
They try to have them as consistent as possible, so they're going to help you as much as they can with that, so that they can give you those faculties. But it's a little bit of everything. And then once you get into, and you're assigned to a parish, it's really up to the pastor. Like even here in the Archdiocese, we're blessed with Father Jeff in that from the deacons, he is using us and allowing us to preach about every 6 weeks or so. There are others in the Archdiocese I know that don't have that ability, or at least aren't allowed by the pastor to preach.
Wow.
So it kind of depends on the pastor, depends on kind of their comfort level and what they want to see the deacons being used for.
Sure. And so because now you're an ordained deacon, you didn't just leave accounting behind.
No.
You were still working. You said, in Joliet.
So the diaconate is a kind of a volunteer program, if you will, in that we're providing service to the Archdiocese. So we are making an affirmation to the Archbishop of service. So he's then going to assign us to a parish. But deacons are intended to be part of the community. And by being part of the community, that means being employed by the community, being, living in the community.
So that's the greater community, not just the church community.
Not the church community, but the broader community. So we aren't compensated by the parish or aren't compensated by the church, but rather we're all employed elsewhere. Right now, I've retired from the kind of the corporate world, if you will, but I am the finance director at St. Patrick Parish in Fremont. So I'm I've been there for probably about 9 months or so now. But kind of taking the skills that I have in my corporate career and being able to use them to be able to give back to God. And so that's kind of, somebody told me I had been retired for, I don't know, about a year or so. Somebody told me I failed retirement, but mainly because I needed something to do.
Sure. And would you be, so if you're a deacon here at this parish, and let's say somewhere down the line Larry retires, would you be able to work for the parish that you were the deacon of?
It depends on Father Jeff.
Okay, so
there's no restriction, there's no prohibition. It's something that can happen. And for instance, in Fremont, one of the deacons that is assigned to St. Patrick's in Fremont is also their minister to the elderly and the aging. So he essentially coordinates all of the Eucharistic ministers and the extraordinary ministers and the deacons for taking communion out to the nursing homes, etc., which hasn't been a whole lot to do of late.
Right.
That hasn't
you can't really do that right now.
But yeah. So yes.
So yeah, a deacon can work at his parish.
Yes.
Obviously, if he's qualified for the job and the
correct
hiring process, whatever. Okay.
There would be no prohibition. So it'd be like any other employee. If Larry were to retire and Father Jeff wanted to replace that position, which presumably he would need to, he would be able to go out and hire anybody he wanted if the person happened to be a deacon. Great. But cool. It's not a requirement.
Sure.
And so there wouldn't be any prohibition.
And like you are a deacon here, but work at a different parish, and that's all fine and works out as well. And so as a deacon, do you have obligations that you have to do? Or can you just show up whenever you want?
A little bit of everything. We have taken a vow from a morning prayer and evening prayer. So we've taken taken upon ourselves as part of our ordination vows that we will faithfully pray as part of the divine office, the liturgy of the hours, morning prayer and evening prayer each day. We've also taken an oath that if we're married, we're going to take a vow of chastity should our spouse predecease us. So if, heaven forbid, anything happened to my wife, I wouldn't be able to remarry. And for those of my classmates that weren't married when we were ordained, they've taken a vow of chastity.
Would you be able to become a priest after that?
Yes. So it would, if that was something that I would choose to do, and it was something that the diocese wanted as well, I could enter formation to become a priest. I think part of it is going to be based upon how old I would be.
Sure.
They don't want to go through the process of training somebody as a priest if they're not going to get very many years out of them. But
that's a lot of money and resources.
Money and resources, exactly.
For someone that's going to retire in 3 years.
Exactly.
Okay, very cool. And so so you took those vows.
So we have those, but as far as that, those are primarily the main requirements that we have. They do ask us to have, and this is based upon each individual diocese. So the Archdiocese of Omaha might be a little bit different than the Diocese of Joliet, etc. But there's continuing education requirements. There are protecting God's children. I can't remember what it's called here, but so those types of classes to ensure that we are all, and those aren't just the deacons, but those are anybody that's working for the Archdiocese, to ensure the safety of the children that we're serving, and also kind of being cognizant of just kind of some of the issues so that we might be able to recognize.
Sure.
So.
And so there are no obligations to how many masses you have to attend or anything like that?
No. So a lot of it is based upon just what your pastor wants. So with when I was ordained, I took an oath of service to the bishop of the Diocese of Joliet. Transferring out here, that oath, while I haven't formally had to make it, kind of transferred to the Archbishop of Omaha. The Archbishop then came back and said, okay, we're going to assign you to St. Charles Borromeo, which was kind of one of those things where I said, okay, I'm going to be a member of St. Charles Borromeo, I'd like to serve there. They then reached out to Father Jeff and said, okay, we've got this deacon that's coming in, do you want him? And as long as Father Jeff said yes and I said yes, they said, okay, fine, you're at St. Charles. But then once I'm here, it's really up to Father Jeff and his discretion. Father Jeff runs this parish.
Right.
So he makes all the decisions. If there's things that he wants us to get involved in, then we will try to get involved in. And it's really, I think he doesn't want us to do anything we're not comfortable with, but also we're trying to do whatever we can to help him. And so we try to have one of the three deacons that we have at each of the masses, just so that we're covered from that perspective. Typically the deacons will, and again, not during the current time, but pre-pandemic, we would do the various home visits to the extent people are ill or unable to travel. We would take a Eucharistic visit with them and bring them the Eucharist and pray with them. And we're also helping out with the baptismal training classes. I think Deacon Dan and his wife, Linda, and I are doing those. So it kind of depends. And also involved in the RCIA program. Deacon Dave is extremely involved in that, and he and his wife are ministers with that as well. So it kind of depends on what we're called to, but also what Father Jeff wants us to do.
Sure.
So it's kind of
based on the needs.
Yeah.
When you become a deacon, let's say I decided to become a deacon, do you get to choose, or you said you kind of you get placed, and so does Father Jeff have to sponsor me since I'm at this parish? Does he have to write that letter of recommendation?
So when you were first applying to the diaconate, your pastor has to send a letter to the diaconate office basically saying, yes, this person is highly involved in his parish, because they want somebody who is kind of showing that level of service already. Because
sure.
You don't want to be ordained and then say, okay, now you're going to do service, because it really has to be part of your being, if you will. So the sponsorship component is really so that the pastor can say, yes, I know him. Yes, he's involved. Yes, I think he'd make a good candidate. You can then enter into the program. Now, technically, there's no guarantee you're going to get assigned to the parish that you were in when you entered into the diaconate, meaning once ordained, the archbishop could assign you anywhere. To any of the parishes, kind of based upon where the need is. They tend to try to assign you to your home parish, mainly because it's easier. They don't want you traveling across the archdiocese, but they do want to kind of spread out that need. So they at least reserve the right to assign you somewhere else. But for the most part, they tend to try to assign you where your home parish is,
Sure.
because that's where the community knows you. That's where you're involved, and they don't want you to have to try to start over. But depending on need, they kind of reserve the right, if you will.
Is it the same way with reassignment? Or
So if for some reason something came up, either that for whatever reason I couldn't serve here and felt the need to have to serve at a different parish in the archdiocese, I could petition the archbishop in the chancery office. There's no guarantee that they would say yes, but I think based upon the circumstances, they wouldn't necessarily say no.
Got
they
it.
might, but they wouldn't necessarily.
So
say
if you got a new
The same
job
thing,
and
if I got a new job, or if we had to move, they would really take those into consideration. So
okay, and they wouldn't just randomly say, Deacon Steve, you're gonna go. It's not like priest reassignments where
Right.
they're just gonna shuffle you around randomly.
right,
Okay,
they reserve the right to, but they tend to not do that.
it makes sense. That
Mainly because they recognize the fact that from the deacons in the permanent diaconate, they have wives and families, and by moving the deacon around would tend to also assume that you're going to move the family around, in that it's really hard to be a deacon in one parish and say, okay, but my home parish is over here.
right.
Because now you're kind of dividing your time between, okay, where's the service end and where does the faith nourishment begin on the other side. It makes it a little bit more difficult. It could happen, but they try to not do that.
Okay, very good. Well, we are past time. So,
The one
is
thing
there
I will
anything else?
one last point. So just the importance of the diaconate. All priests are a deacon. All bishops are a deacon. So the deacons are obviously the most important of everyone, because all clergy are deacons.
Everyone has to get their 2 cents in.
But so priests and bishops, etc., when they are ordained to the priesthood, they are first ordained as a transitional deacon. For those of us that are married, we were ordained as a permanent deacon, but I do like to get the dig in that the priests are also deacons.
Yeah, that's good. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I
Father
think
Jeff doesn't see this, does he?
no,
Okay.
he's too busy to watch. He saw if you would have been able to see that the 50th episode that we did. He said, I don't know why anybody would watch this. So I doubt he will watch this, but maybe I could save him this clip. But thank you so much for joining us. I learned a lot about just the diaconate and just a little bit of just the ins and outs, and learned more about you, which is always good. And so
I'm glad to be here.
yeah, well, you do one of the masses pretty much every week unless you're out of town.
Right.
And so, yeah, now we hope to know a little bit more about Deacon Steve, and we still have Deacon Dan and Deacon Dave coming up maybe later this week even. So, God bless you guys. Have a great week.
Thank you.